So now friends, in this session we will be focusing on the tools of recombinant DNA technology. So as I told you, the tools are restriction enzymes, ligases, polymerases, vectors and the host organisms. So today we will be discussing about restriction enzymes. So the whole story began when scientists discovered two new enzymes in 1963. So why did they discover them? So actually they were doing research on a type of virus that infects a bacterium. And they found that when a virus called bacteriophage is infecting all the bacterial cultures, certain bacteria are able to overcome this infection. That means they are restricting the growth of the virus. And they investigated how this bacteria is special when compared to other sets of bacteria. They came to know there were two enzymes there, and those two enzymes are restriction endonucleases and methylases. Now let us know how these two enzymes are helping this bacteria to stop or to restrict the growth of virus within this cell. And the bacteria that is investigated is Escherichia coli, and the virus that infects the bacterium is called as a bacteriophage. So now the central question, the focus of the scientists was how certain bacteria are able to escape the infection from the bacteriophages. So in order to understand this, let us go through the process of infection here. So whenever a virus wants to infect a bacterial cell, there are certain stages. In the first step, the virus will come and attach itself to the surface of the bacteria. We call it as adsorption process. So once the viral particle is successfully able to attach itself to the bacterium, it injects its DNA molecule into the bacterial cell. Once the viral DNA is injected, the viral DNA will literally take over the bacterial cell. Making use of the bacterial enzymatic machinery, the viral DNA propagates itself. It makes viral DNAs, viral mRNAs and the viral proteins. Literally, the bacterial cell is now converted into a factory of viruses. Once all the proteins and viral material is synthesized in the bacterium, it leads to assembly of the daughter viral particles. Now once the daughter viral particles are assembled, now the bacterial cell will lyse, it will break open and it will release a new crop of the viral cells. This is the process of infection. So now, whenever a bacteriophage is infecting, every bacteria should undergo this fate and the whole process will take just 20 minutes. But now the question is how certain bacteria are able to overcome this infection process. It is because of the two enzymes. So here it is quite interesting to find out that these bacteria, they have recruited a set of enzymes called restriction endonucleases, which act like a defense mechanism, or they act like our immune cells, and these restriction endonucleases, they keep circulating in this bacterial cell, and whenever they come across a foreign DNA particle, it can be a viral DNA or it can be any other DNA. So these restriction enzymes are specialized to scan the cell, identify any foreign DNA particle, and immediately they will chop them off into bits. So this is how your restriction enzymes are not allowing the viral DNA to take hold of the cell and infect the bacterium. Now, the question here is, if your restriction enzyme is able to break, restriction endonuclease is an enzyme that is specialized to break DNA or RNA. So in that case, if you can see here, look at the two cases where one bacterium is having restriction endonucleases and the second bacterium is not having restriction endonucleases. As I told you, as soon as the viral DNA enters the host cell, with the help of restriction enzymes, the viral DNA is immediately chopped off into bits. And this is how your bacteria is able to withstand or restrict the growth of a virus. But in the second case, because due to the absence of restriction enzymes, your viral DNA was able to take it as an advantage, and now virus is successfully establishing the infection, right? Now in this case, I have a question for you. That is, if the restriction enzyme is specialized in cutting the DNA or RNA, why is it not breaking its own DNA? Why is it not breaking its own DNA, right? Even for this, the cell has come up with another mechanism. What's that mechanism? The host cell, in order to save itself or in order to save its own DNA from its own restriction enzymes, it has modified its DNA. And who does that modification? It is the second enzyme, that is methylase, right? So here the question is, if the restriction enzyme is cutting the DNA, how is the host DNA able to escape its own restriction enzymes? For that sake, your bacteria has another set of enzymes called methylases, right? So these methylases, they mask the host DNA by adding methyl groups. If you go into the detail, this is the bacterium with the host chromosome, and these are the restriction enzymes here. Now the restriction enzyme is chopping off any piece of DNA. It cannot discriminate whether it is host DNA or foreign DNA or anything. So in that case, the host DNA is having a special enzyme called methylase. This enzyme is going to add the methyl group to the host DNA. Methyl group is added to the host DNA, and this process of addition of methyl groups to the host DNA is otherwise called as modification. Right? So if you can see, the host DNA is having methyl groups here and there, so that these methyl groups will help in masking the sites for cleavage. So if this is your methylated DNA, and when the methylated DNA is subjected for restriction digestion, this is your restriction enzyme. The enzyme cannot act on the methylated DNA because these methyl groups are masking the sites where the enzyme has to make the cuts. And this is how the host chromosome is able to overcome its own restriction enzymes, whereas any foreign piece of DNA which is not methylated will be subjected to restriction digestion, right? Now this whole process where methylases helping in modification of the host DNA, restriction enzymes helping in cleaving the viral DNA or any other foreign DNA, this whole process is called as restriction modification. Restriction is done by the restriction enzymes and modification is done by methylases, right? Now let's talk a bit about the restriction enzymes. So as I told you, the methylases are specialized in adding the methyl group to the host DNA, and by adding methyl group they are masking the restriction sites on which the enzyme can act, and this is how the host DNA is saved from its own restriction enzymes. Now let us talk about the restriction enzymes, its nomenclature, classification and mode of action. So as I told you, restriction enzymes are otherwise called as molecular scissors because they are specialized in chopping off or digesting a piece of DNA or RNA. They belong to a large class of enzymes called nucleases. Nucleases are specialized enzymes that cleaves the DNA by hydrolysis. So what do you mean by hydrolysis? Breaking a bond by adding water molecule is called hydrolysis. So which bonds are cleaved by these restriction enzymes? They cleave the phosphodiester bonds that are present in the backbone of DNA, right? So when we have to talk about the nucleases are of two types depending on the way they act. One is exonuclease and the other one is endonuclease. So from the name itself you should be able to guess here. Exonuclease is an enzyme that can cleave the DNA at the extreme ends like this. Suppose if this is your DNA, it will cleave here, right? If it is endonuclease, this enzyme can make cuts in the middle of the DNA, right? That is how, depending on the activity, nucleases are exo and endo. So here, based on the mechanism of the action, nucleases are classified into two types, exonucleases and endonucleases. Exonucleases, suppose if we take this as the DNA molecule, they chop the DNA only at the extreme ends, this way and this way. They cannot make any cuts in the middle of the DNA. Within the DNA molecule, they cannot do. Whereas endonuclease is the enzyme that can make cuts within the DNA, somewhere in the middle of the DNA molecule. As you can see here, if this is your DNA molecule, exonuclease activity may only the terminal ends, the terminal nucleotides can be removed, whereas endonuclease can make cuts within the molecule of DNA, right? Now, the site of cleavage, so which bond is cleaved? Many a times you will be confused when we talk about the cleavage of DNA, because DNA is made up of two strands and both the strands are linked by hydrogen bonds. So always you should be careful enough to know that endonuclease activity is happening on the phosphodiester backbone. It is not going to act on the hydrogen bonds, right? So if you can see here, the cleavage, the site of action of endonuclease is the phosphodiester bonds in the backbone. So this is one strand of DNA, this is another strand of DNA. The sugar along with the phosphate is referred to as the backbone of the DNA, whereas each sugar holding a nitrogenous base and two nitrogenous bases are together with the help of hydrogen bonds, right? So whenever you want to cleave a piece of DNA, suppose if this is your DNA, the backbone is this ribbon-like structure and the nucleotides or the nitrogenous bases are projected towards the interior of the helix. So if I have to show you, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar. This will be the 3' OH and this can be the 5' phosphate group. This is one strand and you are calling this as a backbone. And now the nitrogenous base is attached to the sugars like this. This is the base. Now the second strand also goes like this. Always remember, two sugars are held together by one phosphate. On either side of the phosphate we have two ester bonds here. So now for this strand, this will be the 5' group and this will be the 3' OH group, right? Now this sugar is also having the nitrogenous base. If here it is A, here we should have T, as they are complementary to each other. T pairs with A and G pairs with C. Now these nitrogenous bases are together with the help of hydrogen bonds. As you all know, 2 hydrogen bonds between A and T and 3 hydrogen bonds between G and C. Now in this case, if this is your whole DNA fragment, your restriction enzyme is going to cleave this ester bond. So here one phosphate is holding two sugars on either side with the help of ester bonds. This is one ester linkage, this is the another ester linkage. So we are going to call this as phosphodiester bonds, right? So the site of action of restriction enzyme is always, it is going to cleave this ester bond by adding a water molecule, right? But not these hydrogens. If hydrogens bonds are removed, the DNA will be peeled off into two single strandeds, but it cannot be chopped up into fragments. Now, let us get into the details of the restriction enzyme nomenclature, classification, its pattern and mode of action. So friends, these restriction enzymes are a class of enzymes that were discovered initially by Werner Arber and Smith. When they discovered these enzymes for the first time, they were of type 1. Now later we came to know that these restriction enzymes, there are 3 types of restriction enzymes based on the way they act on the nucleic acid molecule. And they are classified as type 1, type 2 and type 3. So basically restriction enzymes are classified into type 1, type 2 and type 3 based on their mechanism of action, right? Now which type we are going to use in the genetic engineering? It is type 2. Always remember, it is type 2 restriction enzymes that are being used in the genetic engineering experiments. Now these are the people, Werner Arber and Smith. These are the two people who discovered restriction enzymes for the first time. And the one that they discovered belongs to type 1. And later it was Nathans who was able to use these restriction enzymes in genetic engineering process. Right? Now all these three, they were awarded with Nobel Prize in the year 1978 for the discovery of the restriction enzymes. And here type 1 restriction enzymes are not used in genetic engineering, only type 2 we are using in the genetic engineering process. It is Arber, Nathans and Smith who were awarded a Nobel Prize for their discovery and application of restriction enzymes in the field of genetic engineering. Now, HindI2. HindI2 is a type 2 restriction enzyme. This enzyme was the first one to be isolated and characterized. Remember, HindI2 is not the first restriction enzyme to be discovered. It is the first restriction enzyme to be purified and characterized, right? And today we have almost 900 such restriction enzymes isolated from almost 230 strains of bacteria. When we have to talk about the name, why they got the name as restriction enzyme? Why they got this name? That is because it is these enzymes that are restricting the growth of a virus within the bacterial cell. Now the second important thing is the way they act on the DNA. These restriction enzymes, they cannot act at random sites or sequences of DNA, but for them to act on a DNA, they need a specific sequence, and that specific sequence is otherwise called as recognition sequence or restriction sequence. Remember, the sequence on which your restriction enzyme can act is otherwise called as recognition sequence or restriction sequence. And if you look at the names, the names can be a little strange and weird because there is a particular nomenclature, there is a convention for the naming of these enzymes. So it is based on the organism from which they are derived, based on the strain and the order of discovery. So if I have to give some examples of restriction enzymes, it goes like this. It is EcoR1, BAM-H1, HindI2, SAL1, PST1, PVU2, ALU1 and He3. Now friends, these restriction enzymes are special for so many reasons, because if you take the example of EcoR1, इसका एक सीक्वेंस है जो रिकॉग्निशन सीक्वेंस है, दैट इज GAATTC. Right? That means if you want to cleave your DNA with this particular enzyme, that DNA should definitely have this recognition sequence. And the special feature, the speciality of this enzyme is that it doesn't cleave exactly at the middle. It is cleaving at a particular sequence. If it cleaves between G and A here, on the other strand also it cleaves between G and A, right? And because of the way in which it is making a cut in the DNA, it generates a staggered cut. It generates a staggered cut. As a result of the way in which it cuts the fragment of DNA, we get two fragments here with single-stranded overhangs, and such fragments with single-stranded overhangs are otherwise called as, because it is cutting here at this location, such fragments are called as sticky-ended fragments. Right? So these restriction enzymes are special for so many reasons, because they can just make cut in a DNA at random sequences. They need a specific sequence for their cut, and we are going to call them as restriction recognition sequences or restriction sites. Apart from this, if you look at the examples of these restriction enzymes, you have different names: EcoR1, BAMH1, Hindi2, SAL, PST1, PVU, and so on. So they may sound a little weird. That is because we have a special convention for naming of these restriction enzymes. Now friends, let us have a look at the way in which your enzyme is going to make a cut. So as I told you, every enzyme has its own recognition sequence. Suppose if a piece of DNA has to be chopped off or has to be digested with an enzyme EcoR1. Now this enzyme can make cuts only within this particular sequence, and that sequence is GAA-TTC and GAA-TTC from the other side. So this is called as the recognition sequence. That is, whenever you have a piece of DNA, if you want to digest this DNA with the help of this enzyme, this EcoR1, that sequence of DNA should definitely have this recognition sequence. Only then this EcoR1 can make a cut, right? Now if you see here the way in which it makes a cut, these enzymes, they can make cuts in two different patterns, and one pattern is what is specifically required for us. That is, it is making a cut not in the middle of the sequence. So if this is the recognition sequence, if this is your DNA molecule and this is the recognition sequence here, it doesn't make a cut in the middle of the recognition sequence. It is making a cut slightly away from the center of the recognition sequence. It is the recognition sequence. It is not going to cut at the middle of the recognition sequence. The cut is made slightly away from the recognition sequence. That is one point. And the second point is that it makes a cut between G and A, suppose in this strand. On the other strand also it makes a cut between G and A. That is, this enzyme is going to make a cut between two bases on one strand at the same two bases on the other strand, but not at opposite sides. So you can see here the cut is made exactly between G and A here, and here also at G and A. As a result of its specific cut it is making, it generates two fragments of DNA which are having single stranded overhangs. So such fragments which are having single stranded overhangs are otherwise called as sticky ended fragments. In recombinant DNA and genetic engineering, we prefer to cut the DNA which can generate sticky stranded overhangs. Why? Because if you want to join two sticky stranded fragments, it is quite easy, because as you can observe here, this single stranded overhang is very much complementary to this single stranded overhang. And as a result, the job of the scientist becomes easier to bring both of them together. So if you bring such single stranded overhanged or the sticky ended fragments together, because they are complementary to each other, they can immediately form the hydrogen bonds like this. They can form the hydrogen bonds like this, and that is how they can be put together here. Now in this next case, it is the ligase that is going to come and seal this nick. This gap will be there, however. Even though both the strands are falling complementary to each other, they can only come closer and form the hydrogen bonds. But the backbone, the phosphoester bond, cannot be made by them, right? So this gap will be left here, and that gap will be removed by that gap will be sealed by the DNA ligase. This is the gap here that is generated. Now this gap and this gap on either side can be filled by the DNA ligase. Right? Now, let us have a look at the nomenclature. What is nomenclature? It is the systematic way in which we give naming to anything in biology. So here we have a special convention. As per the convention, again we are taking the example of EcoR1. So EcoR1. The first letter E specifies the genus name, and the second and third letters specifies the species name. Species name should always be written in a small letter, but for the sake of a convenience, here I made a capital, but it should be a small letter. Now the next one, next to species will be the strain name RY13, and the last one, the Roman letter, will be the order of discovery. So as per this, if you go for the convention, E stands for Escherichia, the genus name, CO stands for coli, the species name, R is standing, it is specifying the strain's name, that is RY13, and Roman number 1 says that this enzyme was the first one to be discovered in the organism E. coli, right? Now let us have a look at the restriction enzymes. You have a big list actually. We will be only knowing few things which are required for us. So EcoR1, BAM-H1, Hindi3, PV1 and so on. You can pause the video and just take the table as it is. So, and you have to observe here most of these enzymes. So here the enzyme's name, its source, its recognition sequence and the type of cut it is making is given here. Most of the enzymes are making the cohesive ended fragments, that is staggered cuts they are making, you can see here. But there are some restriction enzymes which can also make blunt ends, which can also give blunt ended fragments. What are these blunt ends? So in this case, if you take the example of ALU, ALU1 is a restriction enzyme. It has its own recognition sequence like A, G, C, T, T, C, G, A, 5' to 3' and 3' to 5'. So in the previous case, what we have seen, EcoR1 is the enzyme that is recognizing a sequence called GATTC, and it is not making cut exactly in the middle of the recognition sequence. It is making cut a little away from the recognition sequence, right? And as a result of such kind of cut, we are able to get sticky ended fragments. But here, this is the list of enzymes which will make cut straight away in the middle of the recognition sequence. Now in this example, this ALU1 is making cut exactly in the middle of the recognition sequence. When it is making such cut, what kind of fragment will be generated? We don't have any single stranded overhangs here, and as a result, the fragment that is generated here is called as blunt ended fragment. Now this one is called as a blunt ended DNA fragment. It is generating blunt ended fragments, right? So now we have two sets of enzymes, restriction enzymes. One set is making cohesive ended fragments or sticky ended fragments, we call them as, and the other set is making blunt ended fragments, right? Now which is most preferable? If you want to join two fragments of DNA, which will be easier for you? It will be easier for you to join two fragments with blunt cuts or sticky cuts. Naturally, two fragments with sticky ended cuts will be, sticky ends will be easy for us to join. That is because of their complementarity, right? So that is the reason in genetic engineering we always prefer making use of sticky ended fragments. We always prefer to generate sticky ended fragments when we perform digestion for DNA. So these are the pattern of cuts, as I told you. This is the example of an enzyme SMA1, that is Serratia marcescens 1. And here, as you can see, it is making cuts exactly at the center of the recognition sequence. जिसकी वजह से we are able to generate the blunt ended fragment. On the other hand, EcoR1 is an enzyme which is making cut slightly away from the center. यहाँ एक कर रहे हैं between G and A on one strand and between the same base pairs on the other strand. And as a result, it is able to generate sticky ended fragments. Sticky ended fragments का अलग अलग नाम से they will be referred. Basically it is sticky ends. नहीं तो we can also call it as cohesive ends. Cohesive ends. Right? So this is the same example what we have already discussed. Just have a look at this. So now I think you're clear with the way restriction enzymes are going to make cuts. Why in certain cases sticky ended fragments are generated and in certain cases blunt ended fragments are generated. Now let us talk a bit. If you have observed the recognition sequence here, what speciality you can see? It is that when you are reading this fragment 5' to 3' mein, it is GAATTC, right? And when you read this sequence on the other strand, if you read it in the same orientation, so here you are going to read it in 5' to 3', it is GAATTC. And on the other strand also, if you are trying to read the same in 5' to 3' direction, yahan se bhi, it is going to be GAATTC, isn't it? This is the speciality of a recognition site of restriction enzymes. Now let us see what do we call it as. The recognition site is essentially a palindromic sequence. Such sequence which is reading the same both forward and backward is called as a palindrome. So here, if you have in English a word palindrome is a word that reads the same both forward and backward. So maybe in your elementary section we must have played with this palindromic words in our English textbooks, right? So one example was given in our textbook, that is Malayalam. You can read the same both forward as well as backward, the same. It spells the same. And such words in English are called as palindromic words. Now, if you look at the DNA palindromes, a DNA palindrome is also a sequence which reads the same forward and backward, but on two strands, not on the single strand. So if you can see again, it reads the same on two strands when the direction is kept the same. Orientation ka matlab hai direction. So a palindromic DNA is nothing but a sequence of base pairs that reads the same both forward and backward, provided the direction of the recognition sequence is kept the same. So here in 5' to 3' it is GAATTC, and on the other side if you are going to read the same 5' to 3' it is going to be GAATTC. Hai na aaya maza? So this is the DNA palindrome. Now can you generate any palindromic words? I'll tell you one simple palindromic word which we keep using all the time. Madam. Is it going to read the same both forward and backward? Yes. Now, the reason, if you could find out what is the reason why are we calling them as sticky ended fragments. Sticky ends ka matlab hai those two DNA fragments which can be easily joined together, which can, as soon as you bring two fragments, suppose if you cut this and if you bring both of them together, kya hota hai yahan? G right? Now here so this is one fragment, this is another fragment. These are the two fragments which are having sticky ends. Now when you bring both of them together, what is happening here? Because they have single stranded overhangs, because they are falling complementary to each other, immediately they get joined together and they form hydrogen bonds, right? And that is the reason these ends are called as, these fragments are otherwise called as sticky ended fragments, because they can form hydrogen bonds with their complementary counterparts. This stickiness helps in easy action of DNA ligase, and for this reason sticky ended fragments are highly preferred in recombinant DNA, which facilitates the action of DNA ligase in an easy way, right? And one important thing that comes in the designing of the recombinant DNA is that, as it is, we take two DNA molecules from two different sources. Now both the DNA molecules should be cut with the same restriction enzyme in order to see that both of them fall complementary to each other. Very, very important for you to know this. Every time you take two pieces of DNA and you want to join them together, you have to treat both the molecules of DNA with the same restriction enzyme so that you can generate the complementary sequences. As you can see here, this is the target, this is the plasmid. Because we treated both of them with the same restriction enzyme, both of them are falling complementary to each other, this and here, and this facilitates in generating a new molecule with the help of an enzyme called DNA ligases. Now if you look into the mechanism of action, it's very simple. If this is your DNA, your enzyme is going to scan through the length of the DNA. After scanning, it will identify its recognition sequence and immediately it will hold that sequence, and then it will do its hydrolytic activity. As you can see here, it will inspect the length of the DNA. This is the enzyme, and wherever it identifies its recognition sequence, it will bind, it will hold the DNA there, and then it will do its hydrolytic activity, right? And that's all about the restriction enzymes for the day. I hope you all are able to understand the concept, and in the next class we will be learning about the next step of the genetic engineering. Yes, thank you.